I'm going to go to our top 5 Tuesday list of most crushing losses in NFL playoff history. Now, this is my opinion. So if you have a different game or anyone out there has a different game, please let me know. So I'm going to start off with number 1, the Atlanta Falcons. This was a few years ago in Super Bowl. LI would be 51. So Super Bowl 51, they were up 28-3 and ended up losing to the Patriots 34-28. So I think most of us remember that game just a few years back. The next one, Buffalo Bills fans have had to put up with a lot, especially in the early 90s. They got to the Super Bowl 4 consecutive years. Really, 3 of them weren't close, but the one that was super close, they had a chance to win it on the last play of the game, much like Ohio State this year versus Georgia. But the Buffalo Bills lose the Super Bowl. That would have been 25 to the Giants on Scott Norwood's wide right 47-yard field goal. That happened on January 27th, 1991. Joe, you see what's next?
I do.
The Cleveland Browns.
I still have nightmares about
now,
that one.
I lumped these into the one game. So the drive and the fumble were 2 separate championship games. I believe one happened in 87, one happened in 89. The drive, obviously, John Elway just ripped the hearts out of Cleveland fans, and still maybe one of the most hated athletes in all of Cleveland sports history, or villains, whatever you want to call him. But then there was the fumble by Ernest Biner, which I believe would have tied the game and maybe sent the game to overtime. The Browns ended up losing that game, I think, by 5 points, something like 38-33. I can't remember all the details, and I was so super young at the time that I just remember like the adults I was around just being absolutely crushed. And me as a little kid at that time, I didn't fully understand the magnitude of that loss. And we're still talking about that 35 years later. You know what I mean? So I don't know. Like, so tell me, like, what are your memories of like the drive and the fumble? Like, if you have any going back that far?
Well, it's one of those deals where I can remember that moment in such super slow motion that when it goes through my brain, like even when I watch it, like I felt every frame of that video because I knew it was coming after I watched it replayed 5,000 times in a row. And every time it just plays out. I hope every time maybe it plays out differently when I'm watching.
Yeah. And both of those were AFC championship games that would have got the Browns to the Super Bowl, and just crushing, heartbreaking losses. And that really is one of the catalysts of these bad Cleveland sports moments up until 2016 when the Cavs finally were able to get over that hump. And but the Indians, back when they were the Indians in 95, 97, lost, in 2007 lost, and 2016 again lost, and a ton of these great opportunities just slipped. Like, it's like you're hanging on a cliff and all you got to do is get your hand up to get over that hurdle, and it just slips away at the final second. Just unfortunate. And Ernest Biner, who was the one that fumbled that, had an amazing game. He had something like 180 total yards in that game, a couple touchdowns, and he was one of the best running backs in the league back then. And just an unfortunate, I don't even know if it was poked out of his hand or if it got stripped or what the circumstances were, but it's just an unfortunate thing because, Bernie Kosar being a local guy and the Browns being so good. You had Clay Matthews on that team, a really good defense, but John Elway and the Broncos were a really, really good team. The fumble, I believe, happened in Denver, and the drive happened in Cleveland, and just unfortunate
they just
moments.
Had our number. Like it's the Denver Broncos and the Pittsburgh Steelers always seemed to know how to play us a certain way that would rip our hearts out.
Yeah, and you really can't lose two more heartbreaking games than that. So the Browns come in, for us Cleveland fans, that's probably number one. But to me, I looked at this from a global perspective and went in. Now, I put the Houston Oilers wild card game, 1992. I very vividly remember this game because this is right when I was 10, 11 years old. I started, I was 10 years old actually, and I started really getting into football at this point. And, you know, I remember just watching this game. This is so random, but I remember going to a Chi-Chi's. Remember Chi-Chi's? I remember going to Chi-Chi's with like my grandparents and some aunts and uncles that day. And it was either before or after, but and then coming back and watching that game. And I actually, this sounds weird, but as a Browns fan, because the Houston Oilers, who are now the Tennessee Titans, were actually in the Browns division at that time. And for whatever reason, when the Browns weren't playing the Oilers, I actually kind of rooted for them because I liked the way they played. It was Warren Moon and Hayward Jeffries and a bunch of, they had like a run and shoot offense. Jerry Glanville was like he's kind of like an asshole head coach, but he was kind of fun to watch, fiery on the sidelines. But the Houston Oilers were up, they were up 35-3, 35-3. And they end up losing 41-38 in that game. So that, if you're, that has to be, you know, if you're a Houston fan previous to the Texans, that has to be, you know, one of the most heartbreaking things of all time from a sports perspective.
Do you think that game plan being down by 35?
Yeah, let's let him.
35 down drill.
Oh, and keep in mind too, I forgot about this too. Jim Kelly, their like star quarterback, was out, like got hurt or something in that game. And they went to Frank Reich, who is now, he actually was just fired by the Indianapolis Colts this year. But he had to come in and like he brought them back in that comeback win. And it's just crazy. And that was a really good those were good Buffalo teams that again made it to the Super Bowl, but just fell short. They had, you know, Don Beebe and Jim Kelly and a ton of really good talent on that team. And then the fifth one, and now I tried to stick to games in my era that I actually saw. And this is a game, again, I very vividly remember this game. It was snowing in the Youngstown area, and I was back home, I think, from college. I think I was a freshman in college, and this was in 2001. The Oakland Raiders, were burned on the tuck rule. And now this is when Tom Brady kind of takes over as the Patriots quarterback. This kind of launches the New England Patriots dynasty. And Charles Woodson, who is an absolute stud, the Heisman Trophy winner from Michigan, a great player in the NFL, now a Hall of Famer, comes in and actually sacks Tom Brady, strips him, fumbles. They fumble it and they recover it. And they ruled it after, you know, going to replay and stuff. They said he had tucked the ball and they ruled it incomplete. The Patriots, I think Adam Vinatieri kicked one of the craziest field goals in NFL history in a snowstorm and won that game. So I put on there that game. So those are my top 5 playoff games of all time. Now, unless you're like going through I did some research on this, but unless you're like really thinking about it, or you have one that's particular to you or your team, it's really hard to like come up with them. But there were a bunch. Just looking back through some, I just put a couple honorable mentions on here. Seattle Seahawks lose the Super Bowl to the Patriots on they had a great running back, Marshawn Lynch, and they throw the ball from the 2-yard line on 1st and goal or 2nd and goal, and the Patriots intercept it. Another break for Tom Brady, another break for the Patriots and Bill Belichick, and they win. And again, as we all know in sports, yeah, you got to be good, but you got to have a little bit of luck too. And luck was on the side of the Patriots in their run. This one I very vividly remember too. This was just about 4 or 5 years ago. The New Orleans Saints lose in the NFC Championship to the Rams on a 26-23 after the refs blow a blatant pass interference call and cost New Orleans a chance to get to the Super Bowl. Just really unfortunate there. And guess who the Rams ended up getting to the Super Bowl and playing? Tom Brady and the New England Patriots. So just crazy. I put it out there for a couple other people to chime in earlier, and a couple other people put, this was before my and your time, but the Franco Harris immaculate reception happened against the Raiders again in 1972. Somebody else put the Tennessee Titans lose what that be Super Bowl 34 on the last play of the game. It was kind of a boring game, but he stretches out to the goal line and comes up like a half a yard short, their receiver in that game. And then I put this game from this past weekend, the Chargers 27-0 on my honorable mention list. So I thought those were all interesting and heartbreaking nonetheless, no matter what fan base you root for.